Thank you. This is the Green City Council meeting. Today's Tuesday, February 12th, 2019. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Mrs. Babbitt. Here. Mr. Dyer.
Here.
Mr. Humphrey.
Here.
Mr. Shaughnessy is absent. Mr. Spate.
Here.
Mr. Jurgen.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here. The next item on our agenda is council study session. The first item is the approval of the December 4th, 2018 special meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, approval of the January 3rd, 2019 council organizational meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, approval of the January 8th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is approval of the January 15th, 2019 special meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Our next item is approval of the January 31st, 2019 State of the City meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And our last one is the approval of the December 2018 financial statement subject to audit.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Very good. The next item on our agenda is the public report. This is an opportunity, if there's anyone here who would like to address council, you are more than welcome to do so, and we would welcome you right now. Is there anyone signed in? We have no one signed in, but make sure that you're good. Okay, the next item is a public hearing, which I will chair or handle this evening. Okay. The public hearing for agricultural districts, and I'll read the districts in here, is now open. Brian Coy, Caston Road, and that's containing 22 acres of land. David Jacobs, Bettler and Wise Road. RBI Properties, Robert Boyd, Cottage Grove Road, containing 14.61 acres. And Jerry and Mary Lou Williams, Aquadale Drive, containing 101 acres of land. This is something that is reviewed and requires council approval every 5 years. An agricultural district grants active farm landowners additional protection from nuisance ordinances, and it also defers tax assessments on farmland. Does council have any concerns with any of these 4 agricultural districts? Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak to these? This was a very easy public hearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the public hearing, and then I'm going to make motions for council to approve these agricultural districts. These fall under our revised code, and that allows us to act on these this evening, when typically we have public hearings, we have to wait one meeting. But I believe because it's under the revised code, we can act on those now. So at this time, I will close the public hearing concerning the agricultural districts. And with that, I'll just move right into and make a motion to accept the four agricultural districts that I just discussed at our public hearing. Would you like me to tell you what those districts are again, or is that sufficient? Mr. Chris? Should I name the districts again within the motion?
Would you please?
I don't mind. Okay, so I'll make a motion to accept 4 agricultural districts as follows. Brian E. Coy on Caston Road, containing 22 acres of land. David Jacobs at Bettler Road and Wise Road. RBI Properties, Robert Boyd, Cottage Grove Road, containing 14.61 acres. Jerry and Mary Lou Williams, Aquadale Drive, containing 101 1 acres of land.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to accept the agricultural districts. Will the clerk please call the roll? Or any discussion? One time? Getting through this. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt?
Yes.
Mr. Dyer?
Yes.
Mr. Spate?
Yes.
Mr. Yergin?
Yes.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the reading of correspondence.
We've got the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda for January 16th, 2019. An email from Dennis Manable regarding speed on Jarvis Road. Memo from Steve Schmidt regarding professional services contracts. An email from Margaret Reiser regarding Summit Metro Parks. January Planning Department financial summary. February 13th, 2019 Charter Review Commission agenda. And an email from James Alstrom regarding parks maintenance. That's it.
Okay. Our next item is the reading of new legislation.
2019 R03, a resolution modifying appropriations within certain funds in order to provide sufficient funding and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Mr. Humphrey.
the administration has requested first reading passage on 2019 R03. We discussed this at our committee meeting this evening. If you look at the memorandum, which is attached to the legislation as Exhibit A, it lists out the items. The memorandum total for this piece of legislation is $146,675. $53,000 is the property tax that is due and owing for the Raintree property that was purchased by the city. The other deals with expenses related to the new Kleckner Ball Field and the associated expenses with the Kleckner Ball Field. And finally, $75,000 is an advance under contracted services of $75,000 for Raintree Golf Course. When the golf course was purchased, part of the agreement is that the city would advance funds so that there would be funds to operate the golf course before the revenue began coming in. Obviously, because this transaction closed in the winter, other than having some income coming in from food service, not a lot of income is coming in, and yet staff is being hired, items are being purchased, contracts are being entered into. And so the city first advanced $50,000. This will advance an additional $75,000. It's careful, people should carefully notice, however, that we will receive that back. We'll invoice the golf company for the $50,000 and the $75,000. We will receive that back as an expense to the golf course before any net profits are determined. And so we will get those funds back as golf operations continue. But because these funds were necessary, the administration requested first reading passage. The committee agreed. And so at this time, I would move to bypass committee deliberations on 2019 R03.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to bypass committee deliberations on 2019 R03. Is there any discussion? I'm a little ahead of you there. We need a voice vote, don't we?
Yeah, vote, just a voice
Just a-
vote. Just all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And at this,
Motion carries.
and at this time, I make a motion to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R03.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R03. All in favor, say aye.
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 The ayes have it.
And at this time, I move to adopt 2019 R03.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on 2019 R03. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Humphrey?
Yes.
Mr. Dyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt?
Yes.
Mr. Spate?
Yes.
Mr. Yergin?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Adopted 6-0. Okay, 2019-R04, a resolution awarding a contract to Finley Fire Equipment for the purchase of a self-contained breathing apparatus, air compressor, making an appropriation and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President.
Mr. Humphrey.
The administration has requested first reading passage on 2019 R04. We did have an opportunity to discuss this in committee this evening. This is to purchase self-contained breathing apparatus and air compressor for the fire department. We received a firefighters grant, and Finley Fire and Equipment had the lowest and best bid in the amount of $59,799. The city's portion for that amount is $5,979.90. It's 10% of the total. The remainder is going to be covered by the grant that we received in the amount of $53,819.10. And so I do commend the fire department for seeking and obtaining this grant. I think it's for necessary pieces of equipment. It will be well used by the fire department, and it doesn't cost the city a whole lot of money because of the grant, and we're thankful for that. And so at this time, I would move to bypass the committee deliberations on 2019 R04.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to bypass committee deliberations on 2019 R04. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
And at this time, I make a motion to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R04.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R04. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
And at this time, I move to adopt 2019 R04.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt 2019 R04. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Humphrey,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt,
Yes.
Mr. Spate,
Yes.
Mr. Yergin,
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Adopted 6-0. 2019 R05, a resolution authorizing the City of Greene to enter into an agreement with Walter Haverfield LLP to provide specialized legal services with respect to a citizen-initiated amendment to the city charter requiring the City of Greene's law director be an elected position and declaring an emergency.
You going to refer that, Mr. President?
Excuse me?
Got to refer that.
Thank you. This will be referred to the Charter Amendment Implementation Committee.
2019 R06, a resolution authorizing the City of Greene to enter into an agreement with Voorhees, Sater, Seymour, and Peace, LLP, to provide specialized legal services in the area of labor and employment for the purpose of contract negotiations and declaring an emergency.
This will be referred to the Rules and Personnel Committee.
2019 R07, a resolution authorizing the City of Greene to enter into an agreement with Zashin and Rich Company, LPA, to provide specialized legal services in the area of labor and employment for the purpose of contract negotiations and declaring an emergency.
This is referred to the Rules and Personnel Committee.
2019 R08, a resolution authorizing the City of Greene to dispose of unneeded equipment, property by sale via online auction pursuant to Section 721.15 of the Revised Code and Resolution 2007 R22 and declaring an emergency.
This is referred to the Finance Committee.
Mr. President,
Mr. Humphrey.
the administration has requested first reading passage on 2019 R08. We did have an opportunity to discuss this in this evening's committee meeting. The fire department is desiring to auction off using an online auction, two pieces of equipment, a 1991 Pierce Dash tanker, holds 3,000 gallons, so if you're in the market for such a thing, it's going to be going on an online auction, and a 1998 CarMate Super Duty trailer, 10,000 pounds of weight that it can tow, I guess. And so the fire chief Fire chief just kind of nodded like he got that partially right. You have no idea what you're talking about, Mr. Humphrey. I get that. The chief explained that these are old pieces of equipment, but we do believe that we can get some value out of it. We could hold a local auction, but we believe that we can extract more value from these pieces of equipment by having an online auction because it opens it up to a wider audience. It may be bid on by other fire departments who want to use this equipment, or it may be bid on by someone else who believes that they can utilize these older pieces of equipment, perhaps to add to another piece of equipment that they already own. Because there's really no reason to hold this on to another reading, the committee agreed on first reading passage, and so at this time, I would move to bypass committee deliberations on 2019 R08.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to bypass committee deliberations on 2019 R08. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
And at this time, I would move to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R08.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R08. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
And at this time, I move to adopt 2019 R08.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt 2019 R08. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Humphrey,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt,
Yes.
Mr. Spate,
Yes.
Mr. Yurgen,
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Adopted 6-0. 2019 R09, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the County of Summit for a pavement maintenance project located in the city of Greene and declaring an emergency.
This will be referred to the Transportation, Connectivity, and Stormwater Committee, and a first reading passage has been requested. Typically, Mr. Shaughnessy chairs this committee. This evening, I chaired the committee as the vice chair. We did have a discussion on this in committee, and the long of it is, this is for restriping the roads within the city, I guess in the spring and summer. And it's a $153,000, estimate, if I'm correct. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to bypass the committee deliberations on 2019 R09.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to bypass committee deliberations on 2019 R09. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Now, I make a motion to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R09.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to bypass the three reading rule on 2019 R09. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Now I make a motion to adopt 2019 R09.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt 2019 R09. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Yurgen,
Yes.
Mr. Spate,
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt.
Yes.
Adopted 6-0. 2019 R10, a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds from the unappropriated balance of the Pipeline Settlement Fund to the Fire Station Number 3 construction account, making an appropriations and declaring an emergency.
This is referred to the Finance Committee.
2019-01, an ordinance declaring a portion of improvements to a certain parcel of real property owned by Arlington Ridge Townhomes LP to be a public purpose, exempting 100% of the value of the improvements from real property taxation for 30 years and declaring an emergency.
This is referred to the Planning and Economic Development Committee.
2019-02, an ordinance authorizing the selection of EnviroScience, Inc. as the firm to provide design-build services to the city for the design and construction of the city's Bettler Park stream restoration and stabilization and declaring an emergency.
This is referred to the Environmental and Parks Committee. Okay, that concludes our new legislation. The next item on our agenda here is the report from council committees. First committee to report will be Finance, chaired this evening by Mr. Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance did meet this evening. We had several items of legislative business. The first was a third reading of 2018 R97. This is a resolution authorizing the City of Greene to enter into a contract with USIC Locating Services, LLC, for professional utility locating services for a one-year term with the option to renew annually commencing February 13, 2019, making an appropriation and declaring an emergency, and this is as amended January 8, 2019. The appropriation for this is $30,000 to the contracted service account from the unappropriated balance of the general fund. And this is so when someone needs to do digging within the city of Greene. Obviously, there's always a concern that there may be a line, a gas line or electric line or some kind of utility that may be at risk. And so they would call this contractor. The contractor would come out for the city and be able to mark those lines before any digging takes place. And so having a dedicated contractor will provide good service for the city of Greene to make sure, because if you dig into a line like that, a lot of trouble can take place, serious harm and damage, and a lot of delay. And so this is a third reading of 2018 R97, and I move to adopt.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt 2018 R97 as amended. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please go ahead? Mr. Dyer.
Mr. President, just one quick thing. I wanted to clarify what the amendment was, just so people understand what was changed in the legislation. I just think it was cleanup stuff, but is that accurate?
Are you asking me or someone from the administration?
Someone from the administration or whoever amended it. what
Well,
the amendment-
I can, I believe, give you the answer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chris, but I believe it's the information that's in bold in the legislation, the whereas clause, whereas it is necessary to appropriate funds to pay for the cost of services, semicolon, and then in section 2, Greene City Council authorizes the finance director to appropriate $30,000 from the contracted service account from the unappropriated balance of the general fund, and then it includes the word further after Greene City Council. So it's Greene City Council, and then it adds the word further authorizes the finance director to make payment.
Correct.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dyer. So I have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Humphrey,
Yes.
Mr. Yurgen,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Spate,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt.
yes,
Adopted 6-0.
The next piece of legislation we had in committee this evening was a second reading of 2019 R02. This is a resolution awarding a contract to Sander Contracting Incorporated for the Aris Park Dog Park, making an appropriation and declaring an emergency. The lowest and best bid for this project was provided by Sander Contracting. The base bid is $98,664. An additional $2,000 for clearing and grubbing, and water supply, $14,075. This is a project that has been requested by residents for some time to have a dedicated dog park, a place where you can let your dog loose and to run off the lead, and yet have a fenced-in area where your dog will be protected within that area. They hope to get this project going soon, and that's why the administration has requested second reading passage on this. The committee agreed to move forward, and so at this time, I would move to bypass the three-reading rule on 2019 R02.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to bypass the three-reading rule on 2019 R02. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And at this time, I move to adopt 2019 R02.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt 2019 R02. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Humphrey,
Yes.
Mr. Yergin,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Spate,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt.
yes,
Adopted 6-0.
We then proceeded to deal with the three pieces of legislation that we passed on first reading, and so I won't go into those. We had no items of old or new business, and we adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Humphrey. The next committee to report is Environment and Parks, chaired this evening by Mr. Spate.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did not have any items of legislative business, nor did we have a quorum, therefore we did not meet.
Thank you, Mr. Spate. The next committee to report is Public Safety, chaired this evening by Mrs. Babbitt.
Actually, I chaired that this
Oh,
evening.
you're right, she snuck in here.
I think Mrs. Babbitt was either changing a tire or helping a son get a tire changed, so she was not able to be at committee this evening, so she was assisting her son. But we didn't have any items of legislative business. We had no old or new business, and so therefore we did not meet.
Well, thank you, Mr. Humphrey. The next committee to meet this evening was Planning, Community, and Economic Development, chaired by Mr. Yergin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Myself, Mr. Spate, and Mr. Young were present for committee, but we had no legislative items of business, and there was no new or old business, and so we did not meet.
Thank you, Mr. Yergin. The next committee to meet was Rules and Personnel, chaired by myself. We had no items of legislation, and there was no new or old business, so we also did not meet. And that takes me to Transportation, Connectivity, and Stormwater, which is typically chaired by Mr. Shaughnessy. He was absent this evening, so I chaired that committee. We have one item of legislation here. It's a third reading item. 2018 R96, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the County of Summit for concrete road repairs, including miscellaneous concrete work located in the city of Greene, and declaring an emergency. We did discuss this during our committee, and basically they're repairing failing concrete roads within the city. There's a couple areas where the roads are 15 years old, and it's just time to fix some of those streets. It's getting to be that season. So at this time, I make a motion to adopt 2018 R96.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt 2018 R96. Is there any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Yergin,
Yes.
Mr. Spate,
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Babbitt.
yes,
Adopted 6-0.
In other business, we just passed on first reading 2019 R09, and that was a piece of legislation that deals with restriping the roads within the city. It was a $152,000 estimate, from my memory. There was no new or old business, and we were adjourned at 5:34. The next committee to meet is Intergovernmental and Utilities, chaired this evening by Mr. Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Myself and Mr. Spate were here. Mr. Shaughnessy was sick, so he was not. Thank goodness. We had no items of legislative business, so we did not meet.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Our last committee to report this evening is a Charter Amendment Implementation Committee, chaired this evening by Mr. Yergin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was present for the committee meeting, but the other members were not, and so we did not have a quorum and could not meet.
Thank you, Mr. Yergin. That takes me to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have, to start my section today, I have a proclamation, and I would like Paul Pickett to come forward because I have an Engineers Week proclamation. So this proclamation, whereas founded in 1951, National Engineers Week is dedicated to ensuring a diverse and well-educated future engineering workforce by increasing understanding of and interest in engineering and technology careers. Whereas engineers are professional practitioners who use their scientific and technical knowledge and skills in creative and innovative ways to improve society's quality of life. And whereas engineers face major technological challenges of our time, from rebuilding towns devastated by natural disasters to revolutionizing infrastructure and technical progress. And whereas engineers spur progress and development in important areas including technology, transportation, communication, natural resources. And whereas we will look more than ever to engineers and their knowledge and skills to meet the challenges of the future and realize everything around us and things we use every day have been engineered in some way. Now therefore, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Greene, Ohio, I hereby proclaim the week of February 17th through 23rd, 2019 as Engineers Week, and urge all our citizens to join me in recognizing the dedication and commitment of engineers and thank them for their positive contributions to the quality of our life. And so I want to congratulate you, Paul, and your staff for the engineering work you do for our city.
I'm not done, Mr. President.
Oh, darn. I'm glad.
A couple other things. First, for those who weren't able to attend the State of the City address, the City of Greene launched a community paramedicine program early in January. For those who may have missed it yesterday, there was a news report on Channel 5. So if you have a chance to get that link, you can watch that news report. Special thanks to Fire Medic Brian Lloyd and Chief Jeff Vanai for spearheading the launch of our newest service in our community. We're currently serving 10 residents who need assistance. On Tuesday, February 5th, last week, we had a drug task force meeting, and we had Summa Health hosted a first presentation in a three-part series, Be Drug Safe. Dr. Thomas Mark presented a short presentation on surgical pain meds, understanding your options. Very fascinating that they're able to mostly eliminate opiates in the operating procedures. And we think in the future that the use of opiates will be curtailed significantly in medical practice. So if you have a chance, if you go to our website, you can watch that video. It's under videos, and then look under 2019 Drug Task Force meetings. Then on Friday, February 8th, I attended a call to duty ceremony. This was for the deployment of nearly 110 soldiers deploying to Kuwait, and these were soldiers from the Ohio National Guard's Company B, 638th Support Battalion here in Greene. So it was an honor to see those young men and women off for their duty. A couple of dates coming up. If you haven't heard, Celebration of Education will be Saturday, February 23rd from 9 to 2 at Greene High School. The same day will also be a meet and greet open house at Rain Tree Golf and Event Center. This is open to the public, and the time for that will be 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And finally, for those who like to assist in Blessings in a Backpack, the next packing will be this Thursday on Valentine's Day. That'll be at 9 a.m. at the Intermediate School. And if you need additional instruction, please call my office. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any unfinished business? Under new business, I'll make a couple announcements. The Celebration of Education is February 23rd, 2019 at the Greene High School. Council's summer recess. Council will be skipping the last meeting in July. That's the July 23rd meeting. And then if we're really planning ahead, we have our winter recess scheduled, and we'll be skipping the December 24th meeting, which is kind of nice. We don't have to work on Christmas Eve. Mrs. Babbitt has agreed to be on the Historical Preservation Liaison. Mr. Spate has agreed to be the liaison for the Living Green Task Force. And Mr. Yerrigan and Mr. Shaughnessy have also agreed to be the liaison for the Stormwater Initiative Committee. And those are all the notes that I have here. Is there any other business? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned.